Five Nights at Freddy's is a pretty big franchise that has done quite a lot for the indie gaming scene. That is not to say that there are no other indie games that blew up, as there's hundreds of others that also influence this industry. But Five Nights at Freddy's holds a special place for its fan base. With many dedicated fans who wanted more from the series, it inspired many game developers to make their own kinds of fan games. To say FNAF started this trend of making these kinds of fan games would be a complete lie, as this concept has existed for quite a long time. However, these kinds of FNAF fan games would gain so much popularity that it would create their own individual fan bases. I currently only talked about two of the bigger quote-unquote franchises that stem from FNAF. In those, I would only talk about the games themselves and not much about the creators nor their controversies. Specifically, in the One Night at Flumpty's video, I purposely left out the allegations against its creator Jonachrome to focus talking about the games themselves. I do believe that there should be some level of separating the art from the artist at some points. That is going to change, at least for this specific video. This is the story of the return to Freddy's, a disgustingly beautiful mess. Quick disclaimer before I even start off this video, I will be making quite a few jokes about the creators' decisions and controversies over the years. All jokes are done in good fun and not meant to vilify the creators at all. Do not send any hate or harassment to any individuals mentioned in this video. Now, there's a reason why I couldn't stay away from talking about the controversies about this series. In the very first game that BFP Films 424 or Pontonator Films or Tyler Edmund Estrov, sorry for butchering your name, but in the first installment of the game would be called Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, making a fan game isn't a bad thing. I don't believe anyone should ever have to ask to make a fan game, since it just shows how well loved the series is. Unlike some companies, like Nintendo, who is infamous for shutting down famous free fan games, Scott Cawthon, however, has shown a lot of love for the FNAF fan games throughout the years, even creating something called the Fazbear Fanverse Initiative in order to help give back to the community to help support him. And remember, we aren't even talking about what's in the games yet at all. FNAF 2 was released in November 11th, 2014. The game Tyler made and called Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was released December 23rd, 2014. The real FNAF 3 was released March 2nd, 2015. You could see why this could be an issue, right? Of course, Scott didn't release this himself, but many people were so excited for the next games that when someone posted this, they actually thought this was the real Five Nights at Freddy's 3. When people play this game though, and admittedly, I know I haven't talked about the games yet, but it was... how do you say this in the nicest way possible? It was horrible. So this caused many people to reach out to Scott himself in order to send complaints about it. With even more people complaining on the GameJolt website that this fan game was released on, he would eventually change the name to Five Nights at Freddy's 3 Fan Made to try to fix this issue. Though this was still way too similar to the original name of the series, so Scott would have to contact Tyler directly in an email in order to stop any future confusion. Finally, on January 5th, 2015, the iconic new name would be published and a re-release of the game, The Return to Freddy's. Okay, so let's actually move on to what was within the original game that was titled Five Nights at Freddy's 3 Fan Game before talking about its re-release. The plot was... well, being original is something this specific fan game is not known for. As Mike Schmidt was about to quit his job, he found this news article about the pizzeria saying the ever so popular pizzeria animatronics had been fixed and repaired at last. They also fixed and brought back everyone's favorite pirate, Foxy. The murderer of 4 children and 1 child has yet to be found. They also brought back something from the old pizzeria, something to bring back the hopes and joys of children and grown-ups alike. Now, you don't need to create a whole new concept in order to make a refreshing new game. For example, in The Return to Bloody Nights, the story is based off the Fredbear Family Diner and what led up to the minigames within FNAF 4. You can make a pretty good story while borrowing parts from the old one. It's the execution that's the most important aspect of achieving that goal. If you don't get how my videos are structured yet, or if you're a new viewer, I include the gameplay of the games I talk about within the background. So what you're watching is basically the first Return to Freddy's gameplay, which if you can't tell is very similar to how the first official FNAF game looked like. Within my very short Five Nights at Candy's video, I talked about this cat character quite a lot. This was a model stolen from Emil Mako, whose real name was Candy the Cat, but Tyler would steal it and put it within his own game under the new name of Sugar. Now, borrowing ideas isn't a sin, but blatantly stealing a character design by literally photoshopping its model within your game and claiming it to be your own is quite different. I wasn't lying when I said it was literally photoshopped. They used a toy Bonnie jump scare and put Candy's face on it. You can't make this up. I'm not one to make fun of game development since it is extremely difficult to make a game, but come on. What's worse is that the first Candy's game wasn't even created at this time, so people thought this was Tyler's own unique design. Imagine playing this game, seeing this cat who looks like the only new character created, and thinking they tried to at least make one cool new design that wasn't stolen. Though this decision to steal the Candy character most likely influenced Emil Mako to create their own fan games about Candy. So I guess I can't hate this decision for possibly influencing this other series too much. Now, remember when I said the Candy jump scare was the toy Bonnie jump scare, but with Candy's face on it? I am not joking when I say almost every single asset from this game is stolen from either the original Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2 games or from other members of the FNAF community. Another example would be this design of Bonnie, which admittedly I liked. I love the Withered Bonnie design from the second game, but seeing a redesign of what Withered Bonnie would look like with his face intact was pretty fascinating, until I found out this was also stolen from a user called Fruity Tooty Booty Bear. Now the gameplay is pretty simple, and basically FNAF 2 but using the office from FNAF 1 as a setting. The Freddy mask was introduced in the second FNAF game and is the main defense against the animatronic, which Tyler takes as well. What's a little annoying is the mask is quite buggy to have on. I understand some people had an issue with the second game's mechanics since it felt like it was too difficult due to the abundance of animatronics, the camera systems being basically useless other than to wind the music box, but the most important criticism would have been the Freddy mask. Now, the actual mask itself isn't the issue. It's honestly a pretty unique design choice that felt pretty cool to try on when it was first released. The issue people had was that it worked on nearly every single animatronic within the games, with the only exceptions being Withered Foxy, who needs a flashlight, and the puppet who needed a music box. Now, within Five Nights at Freddy's 3 fan-made game, and the Return to Freddy's re-release, this Freddy mask works on every single animatronic. That includes the puppet and Foxy. This design choice just felt honestly pretty lazy to me. You could criticize the second game for overusing the mask, but at least it attempted to be unique with a flashlight and music box. The doors within this game are also technically broken, and by that, I mean they're completely useless. You could shut them down, but that doesn't actually do anything. They don't consume power and the animatronics will just go through them. I understand Tyler stole the assets and coding from the first two FNAF games, so he most likely just didn't know how to remove the doors feature at all. Now, all the animatronics quote-unquote introduced within this game includes Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, the puppet, Sugar, I guess, Golden Freddy, Shadow Doug, more on him later, and Ghoul Balloon Boy. Before you think this Photoshop character of Balloon Boy is unique looking and must be made by Tyler, no, it's taken by Faz Boggle's DeviantArt. The worst part of all this isn't the stolen content, isn't the blatant clickbaiting of the original title, isn't even the overusing of the mask mechanic. To me, it's the fact that everything felt so lazy, with the laziest thing about this original game being the fact that every event within this game is scripted. You see, within the original FNAF entries, each animatronic has an AI number that dictates how aggressive they will be, so it adds more replayability within the games. However, there are no AI systems here, and will instead just do the same exact movements they are programmed to do within each night. making replaying this game just boring, to be honest. I won't be making any direct comments about the phone calls, since voice acting is a difficult thing to do. No one can ever outdo the original phone guy from the first game. However, I will just be playing some of the audio of the phone calls and let you judge them for yourselves.
Hey, Night 3, I knew you could do it. There was something I need to tell you about. About the animatronic we used to have at Freddy's. Well, everyone loved him. Both kids and adults. One day a kid came and tore him apart. And I'm telling you, there are parts, wires, and pieces everywhere.
That is most of the important information talking about the original game's release. Now, let's talk about the two main differences with the final rebranding into the Return to Freddy's. The first and honestly best difference is Sugar is now completely removed from the game, since the choice to include them caused a lot of people to get mad. The second difference was that the doors now had these holes to make it look like as if they were broken. The doors from the original were just normal doors, so it was kind of weird for the animatronics to be able to go through them like nothing, so adding holes kind of made sense. Still, I find this design choice to just be lazy. This game also included the After Death minigames. I've talked about my thoughts about them within FNAF fan games. I completely love them to death just because of personal nostalgia. Thankfully, I didn't need to go out of my way to find them all since there was a channel named Marco who compiled them all together. I like figuring out the lore of these minigames. I'm definitely not good at it, and most of the time I'm wrong, but it's a fun thing to do. However, I tried to figure out what these meant and just couldn't, so let's go through them together to see what these minigames present to us. The first one we play is as Freddy, and we begin to follow Golden Freddy around, until we reach this room where we see this human looking thing in a corner next to a pool of ketchup. YouTube doesn't like the other word if I use it too much, but you know what I'm talking about. As we enter, the puppet runs up to us and causes this minigame to end. The next one we play as is Golden Freddy and walk around to his party room where It's Me is played before it ends. We now play as a human security guard, I think, with I'm Sorry showing up next to the puppet's box. At least I'm assuming we're playing as a security guard. The next game is as a purple guy where we enter a room with animatronics which just ends. Then we play as a purple guy again sitting at the office where he picks up the phone, which I think is trying to say that the purple guy was the one working in the first game, since the phone call playing is the one from the Night 5 phone call when the phone guy dies.
Listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you. So when I did, hey, do me a favor.
My theory about this is that since we didn't really know who William Afton was at that point in the series, we kind of assumed that the purple guy was a lot of characters and one of them was the person who worked in the first night. So I think that's where he got this idea from. The final minigame is of Sugar, giving presents to children with this weird child in the bottom. Fun fact, this child character was called Emil Mako, which in my opinion just feels like a huge middle finger. Using this child on the same minigame with the character you stole? This has to be some sort of an attempt to be a troll and not something serious because wow. I really can't tell if this is him being self-aware of his actions or something completely different. Anyways, I'm not sure what the minigames themselves were trying to convey since it honestly all felt pretty random to me. Why would the purple guy want to kidnap this, who I'm assuming is an adult at this point? Did the security guard see the purple guy do some sort of crimes and never told the police, which is why he says I'm sorry? I don't know yet. All I could do is make theories, but that's basically everything from the first game. So let's move on to the next game of the series. Honestly, yes, you can make fun of the new character models all you want and say they're just copying the original FNAF character designs and point out blah 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 blah. At least within this game, Tyler attempted to make something unique for once. All I'm going to say is look at the character designs from the second game. Now look at the character design that you stole from Emil Mako. Just saying, there may have been a reason he most likely did not feel confident in making his own characters. Hey, I can't really judge since I could barely draw a stick figure and 3D modeling is most likely a lot harder to do. Now, there are 10 whole animatronics with there being 1 hallucination. At least in the wiki, it counts Golden Freddy to be an animatronic and not hallucination, but that's a whole nother debate. A lot of these are from the first game with the inclusion of a couple new ones. I'm including this version of Sugar to be a quote-unquote new character since technically he remade the design, even if Emil Mako did not want this character to be within the series at all. Now, for my favorite animatronic in the whole entire series. Not because of its design or lore significance, it is only due to it being a literal self-insert of his ex-girlfriend, which he stated was also his least favorite character, probably due to them breaking up soon after. I'm sorry, just let me breathe for a second. People did claim that he stole Sydney's design, which was another animatronic that Emil Mako created, for Kitty Fastcat. Yes, that's his actual name, but that is actually not true. His ex-girlfriend was the one who designed his character. I do wonder if they talked on Discord together with him calling her Kitten to inspire this design choice. Who knows though? Some pretty bad things did happen since apparently it was confirmed that she left the internet for some time due to harassment over the Return to Freddy's issues and because of a fake troll Tyler account. I'm not sure if this meant Tyler had a fake troll account or if this was someone else impersonating him. I couldn't find out more information about that. Though thankfully, it seems like everything is alright now and she's back on Twitter along with many of her other socials. It's kinda crazy how deep this rabbit hole goes, as not only is Tyler's life and games well documented, but also almost anyone who is slightly close to him. Enough talking about Tyler's failed relationship. Let's talk about Lockjaw. The definition of a self-insert is a fictional version of oneself that lives out your dreams and fantasies in a novel, short story, or most commonly, fanfiction. This definitely includes a fan-made game. Lockjaw, in all its glory, is the very definition of a self-insert character meant to represent Tyler. Usually, these kinds of characters are what people call cringe, since they tend to be a perfect being that has no flaws, because that's usually how the author will view themselves. That is not to say that self-inserts are always a negative thing, just that they usually tend to stray into the Mary Sue archetype. Before you call this speculation, it was even designed to look like the creator on purpose, with it even being one of Tyler's favorite character designs. Doug seems to be one of the few newer animatronics without much significance. He's just a dog character with no controversies or issues at all, other than his wonky design, but I don't want to talk about the quality of the character designs too much here. The final new character is Shadow Lockjaw, who is honestly just like the Shadow animatronics from the second FNAF game, with a dash of Golden Freddy mixed in. That is all the new animatronics shown, so let's talk about the plot finally. The second game is actually a prequel to the original Return to Freddy's, a design choice no one would have expected since no other FNAF game has ever done this. We are a security guard working at Fredbear's Family Diner, the place that is shown in FNAF 4. This is no joke, the security guard's name was Kothneth Kotz. I wonder what name this could have been similar to. Yeah, so originality was never the series' strong point, let's just point that out. The phone calls were once again voice acted by Tyler himself, so you know they were pretty decent.
Hello? See, I told you your first night wouldn't be a problem. By now you might have noticed the music box in one of the party rooms. That is brand new. They just moved into the building 3 days ago. That is a replacement for the gift-giving animatronic that we used to have here.
The gameplay was basically more FNAF 2 with the Freddy mask and music box, but also adds this generate power button that we had to hold down to fill up. Which honestly is just a music box again, so technically not that unique. You might be thinking that this toxic meter looks pretty different, and not something that was shown within the games before. But this was a mechanic Scott created for the Freddy mask so people wouldn't keep it on for too long, which ultimately was removed in the final version of the game since FNAF 2 is already difficult enough. There was also this really weird bug during night 5 and night 6 where if we flashed our flashlight at any of the animatronics while they were in the office hallway, except for Foxy and Doug, they would instantly just jump scare us. This most likely wasn't intended since all the other nights you could do this without much issue. Yeah. Now for my favorite part. The minigames that make absolutely no sense. Once again, thank you Mako for collecting all of them. The first minigame is once again like the Give Cake minigame, but we play as Buster, which is the black version of Toy Bonnie. You might be wondering why I didn't mention him before, and that's because he technically wasn't in this game. He was supposed to be introduced in a major update, which was ultimately cancelled. Anyways, here we are giving cake to these crying demons, while the purple guy causes the crying child to disappear. Probably not able to animate them dying or to show that they were kidnapped. Looking into this more, this child is called BFP, who is someone that is wearing a gray fedora style hat with a blue shirt. I wonder what animatronic that would look like. But seriously though, BFP, really? BFP Films is one of Tyler's older online names whose icon looks a little suspicious. But nah, this is probably just a coincidence though. There's no way he would have copied another creator at all. The next minigame seems to be us playing as BFP again. Not sure what BFP was supposed to stand for yet, but that's what I'll just call him from now on. He walks around making kids happy by talking to them, I think, since he isn't really holding anything. The next game is some sort of ghost walking towards BFP crying on the floor. I really have no idea what this is supposed to represent at all. We're now walking in a bloody restaurant following Golden Freddy, which eventually leads us to this bloody present box with this weird little thing in a corner here. Not sure if this is a plushie or a child. I'm not even gonna make a guess. We now play as the glitching Shadow Lockjaw where we see this key. Walking right will lead us to a loop, but walking left leads us to BFP once again, and when we touch them, we will lose. Like I said, I have no idea what's going on within these minigames, so don't even try asking me to make theories about this section. You can make your own takes on what's going on within the comments below though. A lot of times in the future, Tyler would try to say that whatever happened in these kinds of minigames don't really fit into the canon and instead tries to change them. I'll give examples in the future though. What's weird is that in the wiki, some things are noticeably different from the games we talked about. For one, the Spring Bonnie minigame shows that it was supposed to be Spring Bonnie, but we see Buster. In the Office minigame, you'll play as either Lockjaw or Freddy locked within a room. There's no place you could leave to and no way to beat this minigame, forcing you to restart the game. Most likely being an unfinished minigame that was kept in by accident. I wouldn't call this game good, but I wouldn't want to call it bad as well. Playing it for myself was unique. I definitely felt like I was having a unique feeling, I'll be honest, but it did have quite a few bugs that kind of ruined the entire experience for me. Yes, the models were not the best looking, but as a game developer who most likely is new to this at the time, I can't really make fun of that. I don't want to say this game had effort put into it either, since although the character models themselves weren't completely stolen, a lot of the coding was very much not well designed, as well as the mechanics being completely ripped off from the second game. So far, it's been a wild ride talking about the first two games, so let's talk about the third installment. This third game did something new, something refreshing, something we've never seen before. Not really, but this honestly felt like the first game that was truly its own experience. The plot is based on a new location that's opening up, which is called Fazbear Fantasyland. Although you might be assuming this is a unique place, this most likely was stolen from the Freddy Lane hoax, which I talked about in my previous video. At least it's different than the expected horror attraction that the third FNAF game was about, where there are also a couple of things that need to be salvaged from this location before it fully opens. Now, the gameplay is similar to the third game, with there being this maintenance panel with a light, door lock, and corrupt signals file, as well as this view animatronics button that lets us know where some of the animatronics are. Within the original, there was the audio, camera, and ventilation systems, so it seems as if Tyler wanted to expand upon the earlier concepts. In the cameras, there was this map toggle which showed there to be a second area which you'll have to check out from time to time. There were also these green lines that separate the rooms which are able to be shut down to block the animatronics from coming to our office. Although the gameplay was very much borrowed from the original, it definitely felt like it was attempting to be its own thing now by adding new elements which I can appreciate. This will be harsh, but I feel as though it is deserved. The first 2 games were genuinely not worth the play at all. This is the first time in a series where I could potentially recommend a new player to the series to start. Now, the amount of animatronics did shrink, but it was probably for the best, especially since Sugar was taken away. Though an Easter egg of sorts can be seen as Sugar's head is on the floor in the halls. I was wondering what these renders reminded me of. It was always in the back of my mind, but I couldn't think of it. However, they literally look like something from Roblox. It just dawned on me now. This is a heavy oversimplification of what the gameplay is like since each one is slightly different, but most can be blocked from going near your office with the doors. Except for Foxy, Chica, and Vigo, who I'll talk about soon, who needs you to use a corrupt signal on the system panel to make them go away when they're in the hallways. Back to the designs. Comparing these designs to the second game, they're definitely an improvement, but that most likely is due to the weathered looks of each animatronic, making them easier to make since they do not necessarily need to look polished. Though that is not to say that they are visually appealing, just a slight improvement. There was also this new animatronic, Vigo, who is a snake. There aren't that many reptile animatronics usually within fan games, which is something I noticed, most using mammals, birds, or something similar in nature. Even in the original FNAF series, we had a human character, Balloon Boy, before we even got a reptile in Monty. If there was another reptile that I somehow forgot about, please let me know down below. Now, for the 2 hallucinations, Golden Freddy, who does absolutely nothing other than sit on the floor near us. If we pull up the monitor, he will disappear but doesn't really do anything. Then there's Shadow Lockjaw, which is pretty similar to the Shadow animatronics who, if you stare at him for too long, will cause your game to crash. The voice acting is also not that different in quality, but let me just finally say something positive for once. At least they sound like teenagers, since they're supposed to be your character's friends.
The FBI came over and forced us to shut down, Jesus. Just keep an eye on the animatronics tonight, okay? The demolition crew will be coming in a few hours. Just make sure you get up at 6 a.m. Anyways, good night.
The story is quite weird. Expanding on the plot summary from before, a group of friends bought Freddy Fazbear Pizza Restaurant for some reason and want to basically rebuild it into the Fredbear fantasy land that we talked about. What's wild is a night 6 phone call. An animatronic from that place kills 6 kids in one night. So the FBI came over to force them to shut down. Like, the FBI came over to shut this place down. I have no idea what federal law is, so maybe there was a law against animatronics go around committing crimes. But that's just a theory. A me overthinking a fan game that makes absolutely no sense theory. Last thing about this topic, wouldn't the teenagers also technically be an accessory to murder? Sure, the animatronic did it, but wouldn't the FBI, I don't know, maybe assume the teenagers that bought this place had something to do with those 6 kids? Whatever though. The minigames are something I gave up trying to understand a long time ago, but let's talk about them still. The minigames on night 1 through 3 are essentially the exact same, where we go on to possess or activate the various different animatronics, from Kitty Fastcat to Foxy as Shadow Lockjaw. On night 4, however, we once again play as Shadow Lockjaw, following BFP, who is crying until the purple guy attacks us. Then on night 5, we then play as the purple guy going through this abandoned building until we make it to this room where it seems as if PFP was trying to run away from us and hides in the animatronic suit so we wouldn't get to him. Until... This honestly is a pretty unexpected spin on the iconic Springlock failure scene from the original game. After this minigame, we make it to the first ending where all the animatronic heads are broken on the floor with their lights lit up. Beating Night 6 reveals this extra newspaper story, but what's interesting is the Freddy head was still having a light. In FNAF 3, all the original children seemingly had their souls put to rest. It was a bittersweet moment. They lost their lives, but at least after seeing William Afton pass away in front of them, they could finally move on. That doesn't really happen here. The children's souls aren't put to rest, and what I'm assuming is what happened is the purple guy was able to get away from his crimes without any punishment at all. This newspaper tells us that the legendary animatronic, who is Lockjaw, hugged 6 kids to death. Investigating this further reveals another decomposed corpse of BFP inside of it, causing this building to be said to be demolished by the government. I don't know why the word legendary makes this absolutely sad scene sound funny to me. There is one more official ending, and it's the good ending, which you will get if you find and complete all the secret minigames. It's the same as the bad ending, but Golden Freddy and Lockjaw's heads are gone, as well as the lights. Honestly, if this good ending didn't exist, I would have probably liked this game's lore a lot more at this point. It's weird for me to say this out loud, but the children being stuck in the animatronics makes sense since there's no real reason for them to move on. Let them suffer and in the next game, find a way to expand upon that. It would have been a lot more interesting than just trying to copy what Scott did. It just feels like Tyler saw how Scott had 2 endings and wanted to copy it without even understanding what the lights are supposed to even be representing. As much as I would love to sing this game some more praises, I know I've been pointing out a lot of negatives quite a lot. I don't understand this game's lore. Who was the Shadow Lockjaw? Why is BFP in this place? How did the children's souls seemingly move on? And why are the animatronics getting activated now? Anyways, that's most of the important elements from the 3rd game. Let's move on to the 4th one. So, you could probably tell this video is nearing the end, but probably has an extra few chapters. Although this is technically the final game that Tyler created himself, I'll get to why soon. There are quite a few things that we need to talk about, as this isn't the end of the series. The return to Freddy's 4 is weird. Here's a plot summary, which took me 3 tries to record without giggling. 15 years after Fredbear Fantasyland has been demolished, the government has come to a decision to make the animatronics legal again. What they don't realize is a terrible mistake they made. Assuming most of you understand the concept of Wattpad, whether it was due to you creating stories or just reading them for yourselves, when I read this before playing the game, the first thought that came into my head was that this was a fanfic of FNAF that someone in middle school would have created. Tyler is currently 23, and this game was released in May 19th, 2015, so doing some simple math, this game was 8 years ago, and he most likely was around 15. So making fun of the story doesn't really feel right, since although he is currently an adult, he was still in his young teen years. Impressive that he was even designing these games at all. Make fun of the games all you want, but just recognize that while he was just entering high school, designing fan games of probably what was his favorite series, you most likely were playing Roblox in your spare time at 15. Was he talented? No. Was he original? Also no, due to the abundance of stolen assets, but you could call him dedicated, I guess. Now, I don't understand this plot and still am confused. Did the government really ban animatronics because of that one incident, and why would they suddenly bring them back 15 years later? Anyways, we play as Blake, the same character we play as in the original game. I forgot to mention that little detail, but I'm telling you now. There are 6 animatronics we have to look out for, which the designs I surprisingly do enjoy. I am not being sarcastic here, at least not completely. They're called the Nightmare Fuel animatronics. No idea where he got that idea from, but the reason I like them so much is due to their mouths. The Nightmare animatronics took the idea of claws and sharp teeth equals scary too far in my opinion. If you like them, you do you. Although simple, the floating disconnect of the heads from the jaw gives a more supernatural element to the animatronics. The rest of the designs feel clunky and unpolished, but with some more 3D modeling experience, Tyler could have made this pretty unique concept to turn a lot better in my opinion. The idea was there, but due to his inexperience, it ultimately came out flat in the end. To those saying he made 3 games already, how does he not have experience? 1, only 2 of those 3 games had an actual design Tyler created. There was definitely an improvement between the entries. It may not seem like a lot to some of you, but there really was a slight improvement. Now, for the 2 new animatronics, which I don't think are ever brought up again. Coley the koala, surprised I haven't seen a koala animatronic before, and Sally the panda, another animal surprised hasn't been explored. These 2 are kind of like Doug, as they do not really matter much, and honestly don't have any unique gameplay elements. We have 2 main defenses against the animatronics. The first one that works on them is a locker. When Bonnie, Kitty, Collie, or Sally appears, we must quickly hide in a locker. This mechanic doesn't work on Lockjaw or Freddy at all, so we will need to pull down this lever to cause Smoke to enter the office in order to short-circuit them to walk away. Not trying to discredit Tyler, since it is possible he thought of the smoke lever all on his own, but there was a game that came out called Five Nights at Tubbyland 2 that had a lever that would release smoke in order to obscure the vision of certain animatronics. Like this wiki page states, this is purely speculation, but due to his history, that's why people thought that. The first minigame we get is where we play as a purple guy. Oh hey, there's sugar. Walking around his place, we find his crying child, and as a good person, we stop them from crying. Don't stop a child from crying in this way. The next minigame, Hey Sugar, we once again walk around to basically do the same thing. On night 3, Hey Sugar, yeah, so the first 4 nights is basically the same thing. Night 5, however, things change. Let me just point out quickly, because this is actually bothering me. For some reason, Tyler either really likes candy or really hates Emil for some reason, because he just cannot get rid of the candy animatronic in his games. Anyways, we walk around to find this pretty dark scene of this green guy, and you know what, I'll just let it play out for you. The wiki says that somehow, and I'm not making this up, the green guy slowly turns around and slips, which causes him to get sent flying into the suit. Which, I guess that's why there's this gray thing on the floor, which I'm assuming is like soap for some reason. I mean, this doesn't look like a bathroom, and even if it was, why would there be an animatronic suit in the corner? Like, the other minigames make sense. Purple Guy does Purple Guy things, you know, he gets a little quirky at night, just like the animatronics. He's just a funny little dude, what do you want him to do? But what's going on here? I'm assuming this is BFP chained to the wall? Like, what? Why would he be here and show up multiple times in the other games? Wouldn't the Purple Guy just finish the deed right now? Also, who is this random bozo in the green now? I don't think this was a character we've ever saw before. Thankfully, my name isn't MattPat, nor do I get paid to make theories. I don't get paid at all, but whatever. I am only here to talk about what's presented within the games directly. I would talk about the phone calls, but I already made fun of them indirectly multiple times, and that would feel unfair to do once again. So, let's move on to the next game. Okay, so the wiki is honestly pretty well organized. Let me explain. In the top, there's this Return to Freddy saga, and within it shows 2 volumes. And yes, I am ignoring the rest of the games for now. Volume 1 were the games developed by Tyler himself. He may have had help here and there with character design, story, ripping off people, creating issues with other developers including the creator of FNAF himself, and possibly with music as well. Although there were some hiccups along the way, this was a series he created mostly on his own. The Return to Freddy's 1 through 4. Now, I wish I could say things after this point were simple. Oh lord, do I wish I could say things were simple. In April 2015, he wanted to create the Return to Freddy's Remastered Edition, but for whatever reason, it was cancelled before he even started developing it. At least that's what's speculated. This was most likely supposed to be a complete overhaul of the original game, which if you don't remember, was a complete mess. With it being the worst game of the series due to it not really having any original assets and no real lore significance, Tyler most likely wanted to remake the entire series in order to get rid of the bad history the game previously had. Then, after releasing the 4th game, he would announce he was going to be releasing a game with the same title, before changing it to the Return to Freddy's Rebooted, before changing it once again to just Return to Freddy's 5. Like I said, this is going to be quite confusing at this point, so there will be a lot of mentions of games being thought of, then cancelled, along with many different ideas that Tyler was circling around. It was almost like he didn't really know what to do at this point and was at a phase where he just wanted to outdo his last project to truly make a game that people could love, but just couldn't. For example, the Return to Freddy's 5 was supposed to be this open roam game, which is a pretty hard thing to make considering all of his experience of game development was based on a static environment that the original FNAF games were based off of. There was even this unfinished demo of the game, which is just us standing in front of what I believe is a gate holding a flashlight, though nothing happens and we can't walk around at all. This actually looked pretty well made considering the previous entries to the series. The plot says that we are an investigator in the year 2036. Everyone but us stepped down from the cold case of the murders of Fazbear Inc. We are a child of the past. Don't ask me what that means. We definitely are BFP since they already got spring locked in Lockjaw, I think, unless he was retconning that. I don't know what other child this would be. Anyways, for its development history. Since I can't talk about the actual game itself, because it was never actually released, let's talk about what led up to that cancellation. Tyler would begin teasing the game with an image of an early version of tortured Lockjaw, and soon after would start to tease the other characters as well. Will I actually read the text in these teasers to try to figure out what's going on? Nope. This is where he would begin to create these teaser games and oh boy. So this game starts with a normal loading screen, but clicking story mode leads us to this paragraph. That's not edited by the way. You click story mode and it instantly changes to this with no transitions at all. Quote, not long ago, I started working on the Return to Freddy's Remastered as you can already tell. No, this is not a troll game. I'm about to explain why the animatronics / hybrids are in such a horrible condition. You could pause to read the rest of the text. There is a quick quote that every author and game developer should know. Show, don't tell. And I'm pretty sure you heard this quote before. One of the best parts of the FNAF games is that Scott doesn't tell us, the players, what actually happens, but instead leaves little clues everywhere for us to make our own theories about it. So explaining everything kind of ruins the whole purpose of us wanting to play the game at all. At least for me, since it feels like spoiling things. Imagine if Scott did this. Yeah, so in FNAF 4, the animatronics are spooky looking because you're actually in a hospital after slipping into a coma. How did that happen? Well, there was this quirky animatronic called Fredbear, and Scott doesn't do that for a reason. It's not because he's a troll, even though he does have a history of it, but it's because he understands the basic idea of creating an engaging story. Anyways, enough of that mini rant. We now see the purple guy and the green guy again next to the conveyor belt watching the parts of the animatronic enter the box. This goes on for quite a while, with the music being quite good actually. However, I swear, every 10 seconds there's this woman's voice who could be heard who I think says, purchase your track. But it could be just that effect where if you think you hear something, your mind changes the audio. The woman's voice is definitely there. I'm not imagining it. I'm not crazy. But she could be saying something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
After a minute of this, it changes, going from the year 1943 to 2036. Every time the parts reaches the end now, a new animatronic shows up, who I'm assuming are the new hybrid animatronics. Tyler would continue to post teasers until November 22nd, 2015, where he would announce it was going to be officially cancelled. We will come back to this game soon. After this, on November 25th, Tyler started to work on a spin-off game with Beyond Games. Not sure how to say that, but I think that's how you say it. This new project was called Frank Burt's. Behind the Kitty Fazcat issues, which I loved, this is probably my second favorite thing within the whole series because... Okay, so Frank Burt's was an adult establishment that was going to be used as a secret criminal institution by its owners, and was the last location linked to the Fazbear Incorporated. Like, what? I just can't. I can't. It could have been anything else. A burger place, a pizzeria, but an adult establishment? Oh my lord. Are the animatronics the ones dancing? Just imagining the purple guy on stage trying to pay his bills with Henry in a crowd looking disappointed by his partner. How do you even manage to come up with this though, Tyler? Tell me. Oh, brother. That's not all. I don't know how, but it seems like it would also be disguised as a closed down children's play area, so no one would notice any suspicious activities going on in the place. Sir, do you not know that this kind of establishment and children don't go well together? I stopped trying to make sense of anything going on after the first game, so let's just continue. I know I made a lot of jokes, but this part is kind of serious. Tyler at this point was talking to a counselor, which eventually led to him seeing a therapist. I'm not sure why, nor am I going to find out the reason why, since it's his own personal life and it should stay personal. He was told by his therapist that he most likely should stop working on game development for his mental health, which is why he would leave this project, but he technically did not cancel it, as this project would be handed to Tanner Feline. Not only would they be given ownership and rights to the adult game, the rights to Frank Burt's, they would also be given the rights to the entire Return to Freddy saga, which was a pretty big deal. Although this game wasn't technically known for having the best history, it still does have a loyal fanbase. However, Tanner Feline would soon leave the team, leaving Toonster to take over the franchise. When he took over leadership, he wanted to write off the events from Frank Burt's away from the lore, since for some reason, he couldn't take them serious. No idea why he wouldn't be able to do that. But due to popular demand, did people really want this to stay in the lore? Not going to question it. But he decided to keep it, but change the location to a bar instead. So this was pretty great. Now he's going to be working on not only this game, but since they own the whole entire franchise now, also work on the 5th game of the series. 1 second, I think I'm getting a phone call. Hello? Really? Okay, I'll let them know. Love you too, phone guy. Okay, so he didn't do that, and instead would transfer all ownership to Shane the Barbarian? If you have no idea who any of these people are, same here, don't worry. Shane was planning on working on the project, but ultimately would cancel it, making it permanently gone at this point. Now, that's what happened to the Frank Burt's game, which is why things get more complicated here. Please just stick with me, we are almost done with this exhausting review about this part. Rewinding when Tyler was still working on the project, he would give the entire series to Tanner Feline and Toonster, the 2 people from before. You might be wondering why Tanner decided to leave the project so suddenly. Well, in December 2016, these 2 decided to split up due to having major disagreements about what was going to be done for the Return to Freddy's 5 game. Toonster wanted to change the lore while Tanner didn't. So each of them decided to make their own version of what the game should be based on. Though Toonster would cancel his version of the game soon after. Later, in December 2016, it says here BFP, which I'm assuming is Tyler. Not sure why he would do this, but he would give the entire series to Beyond and Jaw Games, who decided to change the lore like Toonster while doing some other things as well. January 6, 2017, Tanner would cancel his version of the game, then February 6, 2017, Bion would cancel his version since there was apparently major backlash since he wanted to change the lore. I didn't know the fans loved the lore of the series that much. I've seen most of the minigames, heard all the phone calls, and checked out most of the secret Easter eggs. I could not tell you what was going on at all. There was also the Return to Freddy's Radsla, or just called Radsla, which I won't be talking about much, just know it was completely cancelled. There's a lot of cancellations. Now, dear Lord, you all need to give me some credit for the next part, please. My head is mush. If this video somehow flops after I read this quote-unquote book, I will cry. I do like to read occasionally. I may not be someone into the fine arts, reading off of the sophisticated or extensive literature of authors such as Shakespeare or Stephen King. I do, however, enjoy a quick reading of Diary of a Wimpy Kid from time to time. But to call this quote-unquote novel something worth reading, well, in my opinion, and remember this part is completely my own opinion, this novel is trash. XO, why are you suddenly being so critical? You see, when I do these fan game reviews, I tend to look at the positives above the negatives. Yes, I'll still point out the flaws that I particularly do not like, since, like I said, it's a review based on my own personal experiences. But when I have to go read what's basically a Wattpad fanfic in order to give you all context for what's inside this book, I'll stop calling it that now. It is literally a free text file you download off of GameJolt. What am I doing in my life now? Hello everyone, today we are reviewing the text file, The Return to Freddy's, The Dreadful Truth. At least partly, since if I review the whole thing, it will cause this video to extend a further 30 minutes. Chapter 1. It starts off in a secret Japanese government facility called Gilbert Facility, meant to save people from super cancer. I heard about this a while back and people were basically memeing on the creator for creating this concept of super cancer. I thought they were lying or it was exaggerated. No. This is the second sentence in the whole book. This is apparently a super contagious cancer that has no cure. One day, they had a crazy idea of transferring a person's soul into some sort of object and calling this the Save the Kids program. I am not an author, but even I can understand the writing, pacing, and concepts thrown in just the first paragraph alone is something that is laughable. If you think that I am somehow making this part up for shock value, and just to make fun of the creator for some reason, go download this file for yourself. It is completely free on GameJolt. In Chapter 2, it is so hard to understand who is who, to be honest, since it just jumbles up into incoherent sentences. But Allison finds an interesting antidote bottle that says antidote being run for tests that is supposed to cure the super contagious super cancer virus, but has side effects. Wrong effects, by the way, like itchy throat, lightheadedness, 90% immortality rate, and loss of sperm? Was this supposed to be a comedic part? I couldn't tell you. Also, if it gives a 90% chance of immortality, William Afton must have drank a gallon of this stuff since he cannot disappear from the series. In the same chapter, Allison quote says, "Could do nothing but laugh and grin evilly at them." This is literally a Wattpad fanfic, oh my lord. Anyways, 3 Fazbear employees. Don't ask me how we went from a Japanese research facility to a Fazbear restaurant in America. I have no idea either. These employees put on the torture suits that were labeled the Slaughter Crew. Let me just say that again. 3 Fazbear employees put on these things called the torture suits that literally had a label on them called the Slaughter Crew and expected to be alright. Long story short, they start turning into Springtrap, and Allison is just laughing at them, since why wouldn't they be? Edgy guy being traumatized by watching 3 people suffer in front of him. That's cool, I guess. I will now read another passage of what happened. Remember, you can go read this yourself if you believe I changed any of the words. Quote, as Allison presses the button, one of the employees yell, "Damn you!" as the torture suit shoves and stabs the knives and needles from head to toe, draining every single drop of blood, draining every bit of blood and organs from their bodies to use it as fuel. They screamed and cried as Allison watched them die until he heard nothing come out of their mouths. If this doesn't seal the deal of making you think this as an edgy teen fanfic, I have no idea what will. There are a bunch of issues with this document, One of the major ones being that the locations changed like crazy. One second we're in a Fazbear restaurant reading about these torture suits, the next we're in a hospital hearing how Grand's wife passed away after her life support was pulled out in front of him by a hitman who unironically says he should have never became part of Fazbear Inc. family. Let me just lay out this scene for you to really understand what I'm dealing with here, okay? An ambulance is arriving at the hospital after a car accident, right? Which results in Grand's wife needing to be in an emergency room with life support. This seems pretty dire, but so far believable, although a tad dramatic. The doctor was falsely called out by another patient. Not sure how this happens, but it does. Which causes a fake doctor to come in to take over the procedure. This fake doctor was actually a hidden gang member, Hitman, which does everything I just mentioned previously. By the way, Grand was the green guy from before. I probably should have mentioned he had a name. This all happened in the first 2 chapters, which baffles me, honestly. Like, genuinely confuses me. Now, chapter 3, Grand is going crazy. Some real voodoo things are affecting him. He starts hearing voices saying the prophecy over and over again, and even starts hallucinating seeing a little boy with a fedora and blue shirt. I don't think we ever heard of such a character before. Haha. There's quite a lot of body horror and mentions of gore, things that will probably cause this video to get demonetized. I already took a chance by talking about the suits previously, but just believe me, there's a lot of torture scenes literally every other sentence for some reason. Along with someone yelling for help or someone's name, it's actually kind of concerning. Were you okay while making this, Tyler? Like, actually? The last thing I'll say about this document is, remember that one scene where Grand slips on soap and somehow ends up in the golden lockjaw suit that somehow has it snapped shut? Well, in this novel, he actually retconned that. That never happened. What actually does happen here is he does it on purpose. He went into the suit in order to end things himself. There was no soap. Ah, Tyler. Trying to fix his old mistakes one novel at a time. I have no idea why there was this sudden fixation on this gang and evil-like organization. FNAF was a simple premise. You see this guy, how he's purple? Boom, he's a psycho who likes dressing up like a bunny. That's literally all you need, Tyler. One bad guy with a bunny costume, none of this elaborate super cancer virus with these suits that for some reason... Never mind. I'm just going to stop talking before my head has a meltdown. Anyways, in 2017, he would announce that he was going to actually make a remake of the novel and release it near spring 2018. Promising to rewrite it from the ground up with much more detail to extend its length in order to make it comparable of that of an average several hundred-page novel. Thankfully, in my opinion, this endeavor would never come true. The issue with this document wasn't that there wasn't enough detail, it was that it felt like it was a first draft. Whatever came into Tyler's head was what he would write down and continue to write until he somehow finished. So after reading all of that, I might need to book myself a therapy session since my mental state could only take so much gushy animatronic suits woo, for only 2 paragraphs before I start to break down. Anyways, let's move on since that part was probably a lot longer than it needed to be. Around the middle of 2017, Tyler and his brother Sean would begin to develop a new game that was seemingly a reboot of the whole series. The Return to Freddy's Chapter 1. If you couldn't tell, it was going to continue the trend of being another cancelled project. I didn't know how or why, but all the animatronics would get their own voice actors. First thinking that the animatronics would have acted like the ones from Ultimate Custom Night, where they would have a line after they jump scare you. Though it was supposed to apparently be like Sister Location. What's interesting is that in the plot summary, we are told to basically throw away all previous knowledge of the games before. Now, hear me out. The first few games of the series, pretty bad, but could have potential if remade. So, with the game development skills that Tyler assumingly acquired over the years, a reboot to the series would honestly not be a bad thing. though canceling a project for his mental health is understandable. As much as I would love to see what he would do with the series now since he's much more mature and most likely is able to do things in a much more respectable way, his mental health should be a priority. Although it's hyped up, not a lot is actually known about the gameplay. People should stop trying to make these free roam FNAF fan games in my opinion, and before you attack me in the comments, a lot of times it feels like the game developers try to do too much, which just leads to mental exhaustion. For example, the idea that free roam is the best next step to the FNAF formula isn't necessarily true. There are plenty of timeless classics that are still fun to play to this day that don't have any free roam features because they stuck to what they were good at. Instead, these developers seem to be wanting to do everything at once, which just leads to these projects being cancelled over and over again. Looking at you, Pop Goes. And don't worry, you're getting a video soon. As a fan of the series, talking about potential fans of the series, not myself, but as a fan, I would want a game to be worked on and pushed back months or even years in development, as long as A, it would get released, and B, would allow the creator to work on it stress-free without worrying about a deadline. Though I could understand why there would be frustration on both sides. Now, for some reason, Tyler would post this? The FNAF cast is not in the game. They never have, it's all a setup. You've all been fish coming after bait on a hook. I've been trying to hint towards this for too long, and apparently outplanned of making people think it's a fan game worked a little too well. The slow revelation of me saying TRTF instead of the Return to Freddy's is a hinting towards something bigger. It's not called the Return to Freddy's. Never has during the entire plan set up. It was fish bait to surprise people. I feel as though Tyler views himself in a higher regard, thinking he was this mastermind criminal who tricked the entire internet, when in reality, he most likely just canceled the original project and was trying to find a cool reason as to why. Let's talk about this new project of his and what it was really about. I want Tyler to succeed. I may have made fun of his works quite a lot during this video, but I am in no way wishing on his downfall. In fact, I want him to create a project so good that it makes me feel like an idiot for being mostly negative during this review. His own personal projects have been lackluster at best, but it was surprisingly inspiring many people to take his own fan games to make their own, taking his ideas to expand upon them further, most of the time creating new games that were way better than what Tyler's ever made. Does this mean Tyler should stop game development since others are taking his ideas and making them better? No. The exact opposite. Somehow, this mess of a series was able to inspire people. Although crude, there was some level of dedication to the projects presented. I could chalk up the first two games being extremely bad due to his inexperience and immaturity since he was so young, but as the series progressed, you could definitely see the improvements coming out. He was a teenager making these games and now, many years later, is 23. An adult who probably looked back in his past and is now seeing what exactly he made. It may not be amazing, but there was passion put inside each game. A young kid making games he wanted for a series he loved. You could call it cringe or dumb due to some elements of the stories being basic or not making sense, but who cares? It was fun to look at this dumpster fire at points, but genuinely impressive at others. You don't have people recreating projects from their childhood if it didn't mean something to them, which is why I'm excited to see the next project he has planned. Let me explain this. Tyler created this new thing called Korea Studios, which is basically a new handle. This new project is something he is now working on called The Road That Falls, which uses the same acronym as the Return to Freddy's. I am kind of worried since for some reason this project isn't looking like some sort of normal FNAF fan game, but instead, perhaps a much bigger project since it's going to be released on the PlayStation 5. Something I don't think I've ever seen before for a fan game. This is a premiere trailer he released 8 months ago, which genuinely is so mesmerizing. The music inside of it, the visuals, everything about it feels beautiful. And it really sums up how I feel about the series. A bunch of tangled wires with these really well designed animatronics heads connected to them. This is the disgustingly beautiful mess of a FNAF fan game. I truly hope you succeed in your future endeavors, Tyler. You may have been extremely controversial at points, but have inspired many people within the community. I've been the Insomniac, and I'm going to go take a nap. Peace.